Welcome to the next frontier where imagination, innovation, technology, and new ideas come together to radically revolutionize your quality of life and to change the world around us for the better. Hello. Wow, that was a big hello that came out.
It was.
It was. I'm sitting in studio today with James Ray, who's, he's been in the personal and professional development field for years and years and years.
20
years.
Yeah.
No, oh my God. That's, me too, 20 years. It's like, and I know that we had studied in
We started when we were 10. Right?
Yeah, we started, yeah, exactly. yeah, right. Yeah, maybe you did. I mean, I'm feeling older than that. But, been in the personal development field. James has done a lot of great work in the field, and he, you may recognize him from The Secret. When you did the movie The Secret, you had one of those, it's like one of those zingers that stays with you, and you were talking about
Your wish is my command.
Your wish is my command. Yeah, that was James, and it really stood out. And it took you to the Oprah Show, and it took you to a lot of different places. And then at some point, you had there was a tragedy that came about, and God, like when I was thinking about you and I doing this, I've always, when I heard about this, let me tell you where I was. I was in Belize, and I had met you before. I don't know if you remember, because
Sure.
Yeah. I was doing a seminar in Spokane, Washington. I was sicker than I'd ever been. And I remember you called the office, and you were a professional speaker on the speaking tour. I was working for another company, and your assistant called the office saying, hey, James wants to go to this seminar, but he wants to go to the one that somebody else was teaching, that Wayne Morrison was teaching at the time. And they're like, hey, he wants to only go to that one. I want to go to that one, go to that one, because, Wayne had a bigger name than I did at the time. And you knew him, you didn't know me.
Correct.
I got there, I was sick as a dog. So I don't know if you were there, and and the reason why he was there was because he pours himself into anything and everything, saturates himself with education, just like all of us. And he's one of the, I'll tell you, of all the people that I've seen out there, you have one of the most holistic views of personal development that people get. You're powerful on a platform. You got a lot on that front, and the reason is because he's done all this stuff. So he ended up in there with me, and I was sick as a dog, throwing up the whole time. I don't know if you remember. There was a paper thin wall, and there was a bathroom that was inside the room, and I was running to the bathroom and throwing up the whole time. And you were generous enough at the end to say, "Great job, great job, great job." And I was like, "Oh, it was the worst program I had ever done." But in any case, so fast forward a couple more years, I hadn't seen you. And, I was in Belize, and I was running a program out in Belize, and we were doing rappelling and caving and stuff like that. And I heard we didn't have much internet. I got online, and it talked about this sweat lodge that had this occurrence in Arizona.
Yeah.
In Sedona. Yeah, Sedona. And it talked about, the 3 people that had been injured in this thing. And the first thought that I had was, oh my God, you would never wish that on, my compassion went out to the people involved. My compassion went out to you, because it's like, I didn't know you very well, but you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy. That's
right.
That's real tragedy. You had all this rise to fame. Yeah, I mean, the Oprah Show, people say, make it the Oprah, and you've made it,
Right.
So how did you feel? What was going on for you at that time?
Well, it broke my heart. First of all, let me say it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again, too.
Yeah, I appreciate the work you're doing, and thanks for thinking of me and having me. The work's needed, by the way, in the world.
Yeah,
we're in a very auspicious time in our world, I believe. Mm-hmm. It broke my heart, man, because I was doing a 5-day workshop, and I know you've done longer workshops, and you get to know people,
right?
And you work closely with them,
yeah.
And there's not much I can imagine that could be any more painful for me, and I can only speak for me, than to invest your entire life attempting to help people and then to have them get hurt on your watch.
Right.
It was such the antithesis of everything I stood for, everything I would ever intend or wish for. And so, in long answer to your question, it broke my heart. My life...
it was just turned upside down at that point.
Yeah, my life changed 180 degrees in the period of about 20 minutes on that day in October of 2009. I mean, everything that I had believed in, everything that I taught, everything that I had stood for became suspect. Frankly, our country and how it operates, and a large part of me died on that day because there's a real death of innocence and to some degree romanticism, even though I was
idealism. Yeah, no, I get it.
I was the guy who raged and that against romanticism and isn't that interesting how some of our own shadow aspects we rage against because we haven't embraced them in ourselves. I mean, that we know that in psychology. And I was a guy who pounded on let's not be romantic because I never taught the law of attraction like a lot of people interpreted it.
Right.
You visualize a bicycle and it shows up in your front yard the next morning.
Yeah.
How's that working for you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I talked about consistently what I call going 3 for 3. Your thoughts, feelings, and actions all have to be in alignment. And let's not forget that 60% of the word attraction is action. Right. So I kind of became known. And I think... And
it was a philosophy, like you Harmonic Wealth, I remember, was your branding, and it was...
That was my New York Times bestseller,
it's the real deal, and I had conversations with Rhonda Byrne from The Secret, I remember...
Yes.
She
good,
firmly...
Good friend.
Good friend.
Really
she's,
good friend.
She's a neat lady. As she was firmly in the school that said you can sit on the beach and meditate and that everything would happen around you. And you were the action part, you were saying, hey, this is... So different philosophies, different schools of thought and different people. But you had a huge following, a huge message and a heartfelt message. And I hear you when you say you spend your life... I've gone through some stuff myself. You spend your life looking to help other people, and then all of a sudden you got this tragedy. And when you say it broke your heart, I'm sure there must have been other feelings going on too. You must have been scared as hell. You must have been, I know I have been.
I went through every human emotion you could imagine. I went through denial.
Right.
I went through anger, rage, blame, pity party.
Right.
Victim. I mean, I experienced all those aspects of the human experience, and I believe that we must, because anything's not experienced fully gets suppressed, and that which is suppressed will be expressed in later days in uglier ways. And so,
I like the way you said that. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Project it out somehow, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Carl Jung stated that which is most unconscious within us must of need be projected outward. And so I experienced all those things as part of my humanity, and it was earth-shattering.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember laying in bed when the media was just taking me for lunch. I mean, they were kicking me in the teeth pretty hard for a while.
And which they do. And they're going to look for, and they were demonizing and
vilifying and
and it's hard to say, it's like, keep going. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I know you're passionate about this because you've been through your own struggle.
Exactly.
But you see, here's what I know now, Chris, is that in the struggle, it's in the struggle that greatness is born.
Yeah.
Potentially. Not guaranteed.
Right.
But if we're willing to embrace that and accept it, you see, there's 2 ways that you can impact your life. You can control external situations and circumstances to match your intentions and goals.
Yeah, to a certain degree. Yeah, you can try to will it into.
How's that one working?
Yeah,
for you?
exactly.
Or you can control your internal experience of external situations and circumstances to fit and facilitate your intentions and goals. Did you follow that?
Yeah, I did.
And my opinion, strategy 2 is the way to go.
It's the only way, yeah.
It's the only way to go, because we cannot control external circumstances. We can influence them, we can impact them, but we can control our internal experience. And to the degree we do that, then we have greater influence and impact.
Let me ask you a question. Did that knowledge and realization come to you before or after the incident?
You know, it's interesting because what greater place to practice what I had espoused and taught for decades than in the pit of hell, literally in prison. You know, and I didn't get there right away.
So you went to prison for 2 years.
For 2 years, and learned a lot sitting in a 10 by 12 and having a cellmate who was the head of the Aryan Brotherhood. And
oh my God.
I mean, angry dudes, dudes. And I mean, I felt like I was in the bowels of the engine room on the ship of humanity. And in the engine room, Chris, we tattoo ourselves all over our bodies and show our gang affiliations. We fight and
you had to do that?
I didn't do it, but that's what I was surrounded with, right? We solve all of our problems by our prowess, our physical prowess in the boiler room, right? We curse.
That's scary.
And we live on anger, and it's sweaty, and we're throwing the coal in the engine room, in the boiler room. But if you go up to the penthouse of the same ship, in the penthouse, we sleep with our best friend's wife.
Right.
We have to have the next watch or car or house. We jostle for position and power. What I realize is the same pain. It's just the strategy that we use to escape. We try to escape, even though we can't. That pain is different in the boiler room than it is in the penthouse. But it's the same human dilemma. Do you follow that?
It's fascinating. I'm just, I'm entranced by the metaphor and the analogy. It's so, there's so much weight to this, and there's so many different angles to it. And it's like I said, there's so you got this tragedy that happened, and I just remember hearing about it and being in shock and going, oh my God, what's the meaning of this? At the same time, there were people that were on my trip that were caving, and I was going, oh shoot, I hope nobody gets hurt. I was like, we were there, and I'm like, what, because that can happen anywhere.
Crossing the street in Manhattan.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, it's dangerous.
It's true.
External. There are two types of variables. There's internal variables and there's external variables. The internal variables are the lack of skills that we develop or the mindset that we have, our thinking processes, our feeling processes, which drive the action. But the external variables, you can't control those. I mean, crossing the street in Manhattan, the buses, the cab drivers, the bicycle messengers, the muggers.
Right.
It's dangerous.
Right.
Crossing the street in Manhattan. And so the best we can do is to have some sense of impact and control over those internal variables.
And when you're in the pit of hell, it's the hardest thing in the world, I'm sure.
And I sucked at it.
Yeah, me too.
I got to tell you, I totally sucked at it. And I was going to tell you a moment ago, I remember laying in bed with my girlfriend one day when the media was going after its frenzy and saying to her, honey, my entire life is a joke. Everything I've ever taught is false. My life sucks. It's all a bunch of, almost said BS. I can't say BS.
You can say BS.
Yeah, it's all meant to. And she, in her loves, oh, honey, no, don't say that. And I'm like, no, it's a joke. It's a freaking joke. And I mean, that's really where I was. And that's painful, man. You take almost a 20-year career of really believing in something and really espousing something. And also go back to childhood. My father was a Protestant minister, and the belief that if you're a good person, that God will protect you
and protect you. Yeah.
Right? If you do good things in the world, you'll be blessed. No, not necessarily. And so my entire world model shattered. It's shattered And
I'd like to just ask you a question about, so now you got these people who had become friends, who were
not just friends, though. I mean, you do workshops.
Yeah.
I mean, these were people who I was intimate with. They were telling me about childhood trauma and childhood situations and
Working
life
with them,
situations.
yeah.
And I was working with them intimately on these issues. I mean, that's,
Yeah, no, I do.
That's
I do
deep.
Yeah, that is deep. And we got to take a break, but we'll be right back. So now I want to step aside here for a second because so these people that you cared about that were in there, they got families.
Yes.
And herein lies the great challenge. And this show's called The Next Frontier, and it was about how imagination, innovation, technology changes our quality of life. But sometimes it's tragedy that changes our quality of life, and how we can navigate that tragedy effectively. These families, what was going on with them? Because you've got legal things you have to think about when this is going on. You've got real people that nobody would wish, the effects of this on anybody. What kind of responsibility did you feel in relationship to the families? What was being projected back at you from the families? Because I know it must have been awful. They couldn't have looked at you with love and compassion at that time.
I don't think they ever will, and I understand that.
Yeah.
I don't expect that. Let me take you said what kind of responsibility?
Yeah.
I just want to say straight up, I am responsible for the whole thing. There were systems and there were contingencies set up. The systems broke down. The contingencies weren't obviously good enough. I'm responsible. Okay, there were team members assigned to certain duties and they were paid and trained well to do those things. They didn't work. I'm responsible. Okay,
I mean, that's
and so many of us romanticize starting our own business. I work primarily with entrepreneurs.
Right.
Starting our own business, pursuing our own purpose. And, T.S. Eliot, who I'm a big fan of, said, please remember that pursuing your passion and purpose will take no less than everything you have. You see, there are few people, Christopher, who talk about the dark side of pursuing your purpose. I promise you it's there. I represent the dark side
it's necessary.
of this industry.
Right.
And, most of us want to talk about rainbows and roses and unicorns. And that's what we romanticize, and we think that someday we're going to arrive.
Right.
But we don't, because it's all part of the human experience. And so, I am responsible. And if you can't step up to that, then stand down. Mm-hmm. Because that's the price of greatness. That's the price of leadership. And what I learned a long time ago is that we all have to heal and release our past if we're ever going to move forward.
Right.
And so it's called the past. The past
Right.
for a reason. And yet most of us drag it along behind us like so much heavy luggage. I'm not minimizing the situation.
No, I don't think you're minimizing it, nor do I think, I hear, and to be honest with you, I'm sitting in front of you, I hear you say that, and I know that you hang on to some of it still, because I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your...
It hurts.
Yeah, it hurts. I get it.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes easier said than done. And, I went through, like I was talking to you before, where mine was very different from what yours was, where I had an illegal takeover of my company, and then, people were ripped off of my name and Michelle, and it was like...
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. And it was like, for me, it's not as big as as what you had to deal with because we're talking about a life and death issue versus something where at least everybody's still alive, and
right.
It's like, but there's the depth that I went to at this. There were times where I wanted to no longer live, for sure. And even to this day, I've carried that forward. At times, I can indulge in that, and I can spin it, and it's like, oh God, because the legal battles aren't done. There's still all that stuff going on. You saying that you take responsibility, I get that. So I'm curious to ask you, but I can tell you that I can relate. And the moment that I heard about it, I felt compassion. Even not knowing you as well, I mean, I knew you from the seminar thing, and we just happened to come into contact because you happened to come to that thing to check it out. But I felt compassion for you. I felt compassion for the people involved, and it was like, well, where the hell do you go with this? How do you gain resolution? How do you gain resolution? How do they gain resolution? Because if it's, from the side of the family, it's like, for them to see James Ray succeeding doing what he was doing before, they've got to look at it as being, sacrilegious, and unless they come to the knowledge and realization that it was at some level, and I think the only way you can grab this, and you tell me if you think different, is to rise to a level of spirituality or a larger picture of things, knowing that there's a grander purpose to everything that happens in the world. And for me, that's the only way to let go of something like that, or to be forgiving enough to hold you in light. And ultimately, you're not going to be able to influence that, like you said. But when you go back to, I have two questions for you. And I know I was just going down this track because I was like, I'm emotional about what's happened with you.
Yeah, because you can relate. And if I just may interject, you said you have compassion for me. The word compassion is an interesting word to explore because it's a Latin word. Passion is a Latin word that translates as suffering.
Right.
Now, remember, Elliot, it will take everything to pursue your passion and purpose will take no less than everything you have.
Right.
Everyone talks about, well, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? What are you willing to suffer over is really what that is saying. And so the word compassion, common suffering. The reason you have compassion is because you've been through something similar. And I would say to you that it's all relative. You continually say, well, it's nothing like what you've been through, but it's all relative. Everybody's suffering is their worst suffering.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right?
It hits the nervous system the way it hits the nervous system.
I remember one time, I do, a fair amount of personal mentoring, and before I went to prison, I was still doing some mentoring. I was working with a client who was a young lady, and she was bemoaning her life to me because she didn't have a boyfriend and she was 20 pounds overweight. And I'm sitting here dealing with my life in the balances, my freedom in the balances, losing my home, losing my reputation, losing my life savings, losing my company that took me 20 years to build.
Right.
And I'm sitting there thinking, God, I wish I had your problems.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, but for her, it's just as real. Yeah, it's like just as,
And where she is in her own evolutionary path, it's the same. And so one of the things I've learned is that you cannot ever minimize someone else's suffering or aggrandize your own, because it's all relative to where we are at our particular unfolding. Totally. And I got to go back to something you said earlier, Chris, because you said, and I don't
God
remember.
knows, I don't remember half the stuff I say.
You almost slipped up, man.
Almost slipped up.
But you said something to the effect of sometimes we learn through tragedy or through challenge. I would submit to you that pain is the mother of all growth.
Yeah.
And we always learn the most through crises and challenge, because it's in those times that we rise to our best. Right. And why is it that every great mythology, which I've studied almost all of them, every hero in great mythology never had an easy life. Yeah. I mean, just use your Bible.
Right.
I mean, forget the Greek and Roman, but any of them, the Celtic, any of them, none of them had an easy life. And what is that telling us? We can interpret that as a literal event that happened in the past with an actual person, and some people do, or we can interpret it metaphorically as there's a lesson for life and living here. Right. I tend to choose the latter. If you choose the former, I respect that. And you know, I'm also very willing to admit that maybe I choose the latter because it makes me feel better. You know.
Yeah, no, you know, I'm on your side. I think that when I look at it, it's. I mean, their stories are passed down for a purpose. Yeah,
every single hero of the mythology went to hell. You know, died and was reborn. Mithras of the Persian, way before Christianity. I mean, all those, just study them. Do your research. Don't believe me.
But even if you look at, even if you, to that point, there was a book that I read at one point called Gurus, Men with Feet of Clay, and then it had a subtitle, Saints, Sinners, and Madmen. And it talked about people from Jesus to Hitler to Freud, and every one of them had their dark night of the soul, where they disappeared into the forest for 40 days, or they, had some sort of a breakdown or something, and then they reemerged with the new idea that was going to change the world, or the new.
And Joseph Campbell, there was no one more brilliant than Joseph Campbell in synthesizing and studying all great mythology. And basically, for me, if we hold that metaphorically as a lesson for life, then we can create meaning, because life is not meant to be easy.
Right.
Don't wish for an easy life. That's illusion. Wish for greater capacity and capability to get through the challenges life brings, because it's in those challenges, those crises, those austerities, those difficulties, that the crucible of those things is where greatness is birthed, potentially, because we dig deep. We find what's really important. We come back to our center. When I was, to some degree, it was taken from me, all externals. I lost my home and everything, my reputation. And what that did.
And the reputation hurts. That hurts.
Well, because if we really understand, it does hurt. It does hurt. It hurts our humanity, but we also understand at a higher level that it's just self-important.
You have to detach from everything.
Our reputation is nothing more than mist in the noonday sun.
What people think you are.
Character.
And
so that's why I say it brings you back to your heart, to your core, and it allows you to reassess, realign, and reevaluate what's really, truly important in life. Now, it's not guaranteed, because you come out of the storm either bitter and angry, or you come out grateful and excited and awakened. And that's a choice point.
Now, what's interesting about what you're saying to me is this: both you, as well as the families of what we had, 2 or 3 people.
3.
Yes. Okay. So
3 people died. Yes.
Both you, as well as the families of the 3 people who died, here's the linkage. The thematic linkage is the suffering that's felt as a result of this incident. And what you're saying right now, because you have a gift. You are well studied. You have so much talent inside of you. You have an ability to communicate things in a way that is very, very powerful, that very few people on the planet have. And when you look at the thematic linkage between what you were feeling, the depth of suffering, they were feeling the same depth of suffering because they've got their loved ones that have gone and they're never going to come back. And they've got to go through all the same things that you had to go through in terms of the blame and the projection and the this and the that. But the only way for all of you, I'm hearing you say, to come to greatness, because if the focus goes to James Ray and how's James Ray be great, then it becomes a very selfish thing from the perspective of those that are also healing. But if the focus is, and I know that's not how you think, by the way.
It's not.
No, not at all. You have great depths of compassion also for the people involved, and that's what tears you apart.
I get it.
Yeah. And so all of you share the same thematic linkage of this suffering. And so when you rise above it and you go, okay, how do you move from suffering to a place to make this set of circumstances serve a grander purpose?
May I add to that?
Yeah.
It's not just the families and me. I would submit to you, it's the entire spiritual and personal development industry. I would submit to you, it's every single individual from 143 countries around the world. I was really blessed. I've worked with hundreds of thousands of people from 143 countries around the world. Every single one of them are included in what you just described, because how we choose to deal with that determines our destiny.
I'm going to cut you right there because that's such a beautiful place to stop. But we do have to take a break, and we'll come right back. Okay. Yeah. We were just talking about the this thematic linkage that we said that you share with the families of the people who died that day.
Oh, but and the personal development industry.
And then the personal development industry and the world in general, the clients. For anybody that we deal with, or for anybody that's in a state of suffering, because you either trap yourself in that state of suffering through the model of the world and the way that you view that, or you have to shift your thinking so that you can elevate beyond it and utilize it for some grander good. Yeah.
And yes, and I would add to that even individuals, you know, from 143 different countries, but even individuals I had not worked with, because I mean, there's Twitter and social media messages from countries where I've never been and people have never met me. And all they know is what the media has told them. Right. And frankly, Chris, if all I knew about me was what the media had told me, I wouldn't like myself very well. Right. You know, because that's what sells. And I understand that. I get it. I really do. But at the end of the day, the question is, how are we going to heal that? And I'll digress to what I said earlier. At some point in time, we have to recognize, I'm either going to heal this and let go of it and move beyond it, and not let go of it, suppress it. That's not healthy.
That doesn't do it. Yeah.
But let go of it, incorporate it, and to make it work for me. Right. And I believe one of the greatest qualities of those who become truly genius, truly masterful, which I've studied those strategies for my entire life, is something that I call utilization. Yeah. You know, how am I going to use this for my own development, advancement, and growth? Right. Because, you know, sometimes we are traditionally taught in, let's just say.
Now, and I'm going to pause you just for 1 second, because it's like, how are you going to use it? This is you. And then you would ask, and I know where you're going, and I know why you would do this. You would ask, you know, if everybody was to heal, then we go to each one of those families, and we go to everybody in the world, no matter what you're dealing with. One should be asking themselves the same question if you're dealing with some kind of suffering. So back to where you were going.
How am I? Because you see, let's go to quantum physics. I've studied that for over a decade. I'm a big fan. Yeah. I'm not a physicist. Big fan. I mean, I remember reading books on airplanes and just pouring through these books, and the guy sitting next to me and go, "What are you reading?" I'd go, "I don't know." You know, I mean, it was just so heady, but I knew there was something in there that was valuable. I mean, that's the foundation of this entire universe, right? And so at the quantum level, what we know is that I was having a conversation out in the lobby with one of your team members, and you know, there's a positron, which has a positive charge, and there's an electron, which has a negative charge, and they always come in equal pairs. You will never find a positron without an electron. You'll never find an electron without a positron. And so what that means is that this universe, this physical universe, is polaristic. That's the law of polarity. And so consequently, what happens is through myopic perception, we tend to look at one side of the pole and we go, man, that's really awful. Well, what we know scientifically is if it's really, really awful, it also has to be what?
Yeah, the opposite has to exist, right? Yeah,
it has to be amazing. It has to exist, but we're unwilling to find it. Now, where I was a master of reframing, if I look historically, you know, what are the lessons? How are you going to use it? How are you going to grow from it? How are you going to move forward and create a better life from this situation? And there's value in that. What I've now learned, Chris, is that if you don't fully embrace the pain first, it gets stuffed.
Right.
And that's what becomes pathological. Right. You either develop, there's two things you can do with a shadow.
Repression, denial, and it gets projected outward.
Yeah. I mean, if I say there's two basic categories. You develop an allergy, which says, not me, right? Yeah. And those are the things that we see in others when we go, oh, look at that so-and-so.
I hate that.
You know, the more you hate it, it's you that you have an allergy to it, or we have an addiction. Yeah. And so an allergy or addiction is what happens with anything that is suppressed. And so what I had to do, and I was forced to do to some degree. Now, I could have not done it, but when I'm sitting in a 10 by 12 cell that smelled like piss and excrement, I mean, I was in solitary confinement next to death row. That's called the hole. You've heard of the hole.
Yeah, I've heard of the hole.
Right? I'd been strip searched, and I mean, every bit of dignity is peeled from you.
Yes.
I'd been jeered at. I'd been shackled. I'm sitting in the hole, and what I recognized is that if I wasn't willing to embrace my pain, I could say all day long, oh, it's great, this is a gift, and I'm gonna, what am I gonna do with it, and how am I gonna use it, and how am I gonna move forward, But
sometimes easier said than done,
But that becomes stuffed, and that's what we do, I think, in personal spiritual development, is we paint on this smiley face, and we say, never have a bad day. Well, horse hockey.
Yes,
horse hockey. See,
horse hockey,
I can
you
get
got
by
it.
with that, right?
Horse hockey, I've never heard that.
Yeah,
it works.
That's an Oklahoma word, boy. So I had to embrace it. Now, here's what I learned, is that when I was willing to accept it and embrace it, everything in the physical world is transitory. I mean, one of the greatest causes of human suffering is impermanence, because we want to permanently arrive. We want to permanently have control. We want to permanently predict. How's that one working for you, right? It's impermanent. And so when you embrace it, it goes away.
Right.
Pretty soon it releases. I mean, I had to sit in my own funk, and I sat in it, up to here, and I did pity party, and I did victim, and there was a time I was angry at God. I was like, seriously? I invest my whole life on the road, over 200 days a year. I never get any sleep, blah, 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 victim, right? And this is my reward, God? Seriously? I mean, I was down there. You know what that's called? Self-importance.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
And I had to come to a place where, it struck me one day like this voice, and it was my own higher self, I believe. It said to me, wait a second. Are you telling me you did good things to be protected? That's not the right reason. Are you telling me you did good things to be rewarded? How's that different from the traditional Christians you used to rant against who were waiting to get some condo in a cloud after they die? It was no different. You follow me?
Yeah, I do.
And I had to come to my own self-importance, and I recognized, who are you not to be here? Look at history, James, and look at all the heroes that you've admired for so long, and look at all those that you studied for so long. Which one of them had a cushy, easy life? Life is not meant to be easy. It's meant to be meaningful. And it's in the challenge, as I've said before. But you can tell
I get it. I'm watching you. I mean,
this is so important for all of us to understand, because we have this, if I learn NLP, or if it, which you and I have both studied. If I learn the law of attraction, if I go to the right church, if I find the right guru, if I find the right internet marketing technique,
life will be perfect.
Then I will end up in roses and rainbows. And no.
And see, and I do think that that's a fallacy that a lot of people project onto. And it's not just projected onto personal and professional development, but it's also supported by a lot of people that are at the top of personal and professional development. It's like, hey, if you do that, because that's the belief until you hit something hard, and then you get this harsh shock of reality.
Let me ask you a question,
yes,
Chris.
Please.
Would you say you're a better man given what you've been through?
And what I've been through is, I had my reputation tarnished. People were calling me all sorts of stuff, and purposefully forging of contracts and losing everything I had. And
are you a better man?
Am I a better man? Yes, I'm a better man.
And why?
And it's because I have a greater depth of compassion. Like when I heard about it's like even a greater depth.
Every great spiritual tradition talks about what's a fundamental factor of enlightenment?
Yeah.
Compassion.
Yeah.
You have a greater depth.
You have a greater
compassion.
depth of compassion.
You got to be a better man, right?
I understand even my own patterns that I play out. I understand them better. I have the ability to, I used to be a workaholic. I'd push myself to I have the understanding of, and I have more of when to stop. And I also have a lot more self-love and self-caring, and I've had to learn how to care about myself. But there's many other reasons. I mean, there's not that, yeah.
So is that situation bad?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you look at it, and so then we go back to the thematic linkage between you and between the families that have felt suffering, and we go, boy, the chance for growth for everybody involved with this, including the planet. But I don't want to chunk too big without really getting to the people that are all affected by this one incident is the only way, and it goes back to what you and I both know that Viktor Frankl talks about in Man's Search for Meaning, is to find a greater meaning for the experience, and that's the only way that serves the human experience so that we can grow and mature. And I remember I was working in South Africa, and there was a young girl that came up to me, and she was in tears, and I brought 30 coaches out there to do some charity work, and this girl came up and she said, Chris, I want to do what you do, but she's in tears. And I said, well, what's the problem? I said, do it. She said, yeah, but both of my parents died of AIDS. And she said, and I was raised by my uncle who raped me repeatedly, and I'm stuck because I don't know how do I get rid of this anger? I just feel stuck in anger. And, so many people in personal development, I think, get this wrong when they think, I even heard somebody from The Secret, I'm not mentioning names, but and I heard somebody say, this little girl was raped from a young age because we have this issue of cause and effect that you talk about, I talk about, a lot of people talk about. Did she create that? And I've heard somebody say at one point, yes, she created that. And I said, wait a second, that's the wrong way to state the question.
Pretty harsh.
Like, yeah, pretty harsh. There's a softening frame that you can put around that. It's like, for what grander purpose might you have chosen this set of circumstances that would serve your life in a better way? And she, and that opens the doorway for the understanding for her that maybe she chose it at some level so that she could learn how to really love and learn what it takes to really have that compassion. And when we go to the families that are feeling this way, some people that might not ever forgive, I know you've gone through hell and purgatory, and these are people might not ever forgive, but it's the same way that they've got to come to their salvation that you come to yours, and therein lies and if you don't ask yourself those questions, you live in hell instead of heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the Christ said the kingdom of heaven is within.
Yeah.
He didn't say it was somewhere in the sky. He said it's within. And so therefore you must furthermore believe that hell is in the same place, if that's where heaven is. Well, you said so much in there. You said so much in there and everything, and these little things. I'm like, God, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. I mean, at the end of the day, going back to how did you possibly agree to participate in this for a grander purpose? Yeah. We don't really know.
Yeah.
We don't really know.
Well, we make it all up anyway.
We make it all up. And so my position is, if we don't really know, even the most seminal thinkers on our planet are quantum theorists, the smartest people, way smarter than you and me.
Yeah.
They don't talk about absolutes. They talk about probabilities. If you do this, there's a probability that this will happen, right? And so at the end of the day, we don't really know. So if we're going to make up something, for me, I might as well make up something that helps me move forward, because here's what we know.
And I'm going to go from you to the families that have been hurt, and it's the same thing. The same thing for all. They're asking me to take a break. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right. So, my God, we've been talking about so much. There's one question I really want to ask you that I haven't yet, and that is that, when we go back to the incident, and I want to get beyond the incident. I want to get toward.
I'd love to get beyond the incident.
It's
one page in a
it's one page in this
novel
whole
life.
thing. I just want to ask you one final question to close that door, and then move on. What really went wrong there? At the end of the day,
At the end of the day, there's a lot of public record. It was all brought forth in trial. I would rather not get into my opinions here, because at the end of the day, I'm going to say I'm responsible.
Right.
Things broke down, things didn't work. It was my company. I chose to do a dangerous activity.
Fair enough.
When you're the CEO of a company, whether you're BP Oil or Enron or my former company, I mean, when something goes sideways, Goldman Sachs, I mean, when something goes sideways, there's one person in the crosshairs.
Yep.
And again, as I said earlier, if you can't step up to that, then stand down.
Yep.
Well, maybe not Goldman Sachs. They always seem to get a pass. But
I almost said the word.
Yeah.
So, no, I get it.
But
I understand.
I would
Fair
rather
enough.
not get into that he said, she said. It's all part of public record.
Right. Fair enough. That's all. That's all I need to hear on that point. But how would you do things differently in the future?
Well, first of all, I'm not doing any adventure experiential activities again.
Yeah.
There's no court order or legal restraints on me.
Yeah.
But I know the power in those, because it puts you so much in the present moment, and that's that flow state that is so highly acclaimed, written about, and pursued.
It's a powerful anchor. It is.
And there's transference if you make that transference to everyday life, and yet the risk it outweighs the reward. I'm just not going to do that again.
I get it. I did when I took one of my first NLP trainings. I was training with a provider group for psychologists in Northern California. They were doing a fire walk. 9 people went to the hospital. First 9 people, and the second person, I was the first person to walk. Second person needed skin grafts from cadavers to replace the bottom of their feet, and it was like. I said to myself when that happened, I said, I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And I know that when people do these things, there are people that are injured in these.
Yes.
And there are people in the field that continue to do these things because they can make a huge impact. And there's lots of people that make it. But I also know that every time there are some that go to the hospital. So it's like,
I did all of them. I did the aero breaks and the rebar bends and the firewalks and the roach courses and board breaks. And I'm just not going to go there again. There are ways to have an experience in the mental plane of existence that aren't as physical and aren't as risky.
Yeah,
and so
and bravo to you, because to put somebody at risk, I mean, why do that? Why do that? Okay, so we move on to now, and if everybody's going to heal, and I think everybody gets to heal, because if
my greatest wish is for that.
Yeah, if we don't come to this grander purpose and we find a greater meaning that allows, and I'm talking to you, I'm talking to the families, I'm talking to the world, and I know you are too. If we don't find this greater meaning to the experience and let go at some point, then we get shackled to the past, and nobody wants to be there. We want to, there's a grander purpose. What can it serve? I know one thing, and as I look at it, and I feel for the families, and it's like, okay, how do you utilize that? Like if I was working with them in a coaching situation with an individual one, I'd say, okay, for what grander purpose might you have chosen this for, and not, and I'd say it in a very soft way, but for some grander purpose, so that you could be more or create more, contribute more to the world. And ultimately people, whether it's you or whether it's them, maybe it's to learn how to really love or how to really be compassionate. I see the depth to your teachings of, who you are as a human being. And I didn't know you that well before, but who you are deep. You have deep knowledge. You have rich knowledge. You have things to share. So for those that would say, James Ray, look him pitching the stuff that he pitched before, I beg to differ. And here you, and the reason why I say that, and I'm going to stand on your side actually I said that wrong. There are no sides. But the reason why I beg to differ is because you have great knowledge, great experience, and that you have to share that with the world.
Thank you for that. That means a lot to me. I did a workshop in Phoenix just last weekend, a full day seminar. And there was a reporter in the audience who had written a pretty scathing article on me at one point. And when it came time, I have this section that I call open frame, which is just a chance for people to ask questions about anything. And it came time for open frame. And his hand went up, and I said, yeah, Matt. And he said, after all you've been through and everything you've confronted, why did you not go off and do something different? And I said, it's a great question. I said, because in many, many ways, it would have been a lot easier to go off and do something different.
Yeah.
I said, but there's 3 words. My answer is 3 words. Clarity of purpose.
It's not who you are to do something different.
Clarity of purpose. And when you get clear, really clear, very few of us are, on why you're here and what, I've coined the term innate ability development.
I've seen that. Yeah.
What your innate abilities are, your unique genius, and you align that with your specific purpose, then you know why you're here and you don't quit. It doesn't matter how hard it is, because life is not meant, to be easy. I've said this many times. It's meant to be meaningful. In many, many ways in our current culture, we have traded money and materialism for meaning. And we think that they're one and the same. They're not.
Anywhere near it.
No,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with money and materialism.
Yeah.
I like nice things, and money is nothing more
But
than
that
a
mistake
tool.
robs somebody, and at some point they're going to find that up. They'll have a wake-up call.
Yeah. Because talk to the guy who lived in Beverly Hills and had all the trimmings.
Yeah.
I lived on Mulholland Drive and I had all the trimmings. And was I any happier because of the trimmings? No, maybe a little more comfortable, but maybe not too, because there's polarity, right?
Yeah.
Not all that shines is gold. And so, what my purpose is to help you, is to help our listeners today, is to help every single person that I'm blessed to interact with to find their innate abilities, to define their unique purpose, and to be able to grow a business with that, be able to live their life and line up their life and their livelihood. I read a recent study of people in the United States of America, and 71% of those people surveyed are not happy in what they're doing. They're not engaged. They're not inspired in what they do every single day.
That's ridiculous, because they're spending 8, 9, 10
You spend more time
hours
at your
a day,
work
yeah.
than you do with the people you love the most.
Yeah.
What sense does that make? You see, we've got it backwards. You go study, you go survey young adults today and say, what are you going to study in college? I think technology. Why? Because that's where all the jobs are. Wrong answer.
Right.
Wrong answer. We are here to live meaningful lives.
You get one chance at it,
lives.
unless you're Hindu, right? So,
Yeah. And the Buddhists aren't sure.
Yeah, the
Buddhists. Yeah. But that I'm really passionate about that because when I look back upon all the pain that I have experienced, I can truly say that I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because we've mentioned the word forgiveness. Forgiving, truly understood, is the ability to be able to say, thank you for giving me that experience.
And I want to keep getting back to this thematic linkage with the families, because their path to hell, or their path to well-being and greatness of mind, body, and spirit. And by the way, James, I did not come in here with any, knowing that I was going to say what I say, that you got to get out there. I mean, I came into this with an
Curiosity.
empty cup, to see where it was going to go. The families are going to find their best place of healing when we can get to a place of gratitude. That's a hard leap to make automatically.
It is.
It's a huge leap, and that's why people go through all the stages that you went through and the others are going to go through. And anybody that's dealing with any depth of suffering gets to go through. But ultimately, it's when you can say thank you for that experience that we get true transformation. And that's not forced upon anybody. It's not a necessity that anybody do that. It's more of, and this isn't from you, this is from me, it's an invitation for people to move in that direction, and me too, with my own stuff. In the Course in Miracles, which I'm a big fan of, it says forgiveness is the key to salvation. Mm-hmm. And forgiveness is our function. There's all true forgiving ends in gratitude. If you're not grateful, you haven't forgiven. Yeah. And there's 3 levels that I have found, and I had to deal with my own self. 3 levels of forgiving. Self, that's the big one. It's probably the biggest and hardest one.
I miss things. Yeah. I overlook things. God, I wish I hadn't have. Man, what I wouldn't do.
Yeah. I get it.
You know, and when we really understand, then we realize that our greatest teachers were our last mistake. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, mistake is a man-made term that we place upon things that we don't like. Right? I mean, well, that was a mistake. Well, really? Or is it just that you didn't care for that? I mean, I almost went off a tangent. Let me finish.
I did the same thing.
I know. I'm notorious for that. But self-forgiveness. Yeah, I made some mistakes. I'm human. God, I wish I had no, but what can I do with that at the end of the day? Others, and the situation. Self, others, the situation. When we can truly forgive all those things, then we can move forward and create a different experience in our lives. And then we become grateful.
That's you. That's the families. That's the Israelis. That's the Palestinians. That's the.
What a message for the world.
Yeah. We've got like a minute and a half left. What do you see? What would be your ideal future for yourself and where you're going? What do you see as your vision of the future now? How do you want to use your gifts?
I really believe I have more to share now than ever.
Yeah. I believe that too.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence.
Yeah.
Will there ever be thousands in the room again? I don't know, and ultimately it's not about that.
Matter, yeah.
Doesn't matter. I had 30 people in Phoenix, and I'm just grateful to be there, man. I'm just grateful.
I got to share with you a metaphor that somebody told me real quickly. This guy had lost all his audiences and stuff, and he was in Bali, and that's where I went to go heal too. And he went to the spiritual healer, the youngest healer there, high priestess, and he said, "How do I get my audiences back? And she says, "That doesn't matter." She says, "You get one person and you love them so much, and you pour all your energy into that, and it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows." And so you're in this place where I believe that the depth of your learning gives you all these gifts to share with the world. As Joseph Campbell says, the monomyth, you've come full circle, and you're coming out with the gifts of having to learn. The hero's journey.
Right.
You're bringing stuff back that you have to serve, and that those gifts deserve to be served.
We're all here to serve. Some are parents, some are teachers, some are authors, some do radio shows, but it's all here to serve humanity. And that, in answer to your question, that's all I want to do. I just want to. I know, clarity of purpose, right? I know why I'm here. I know what I have to share, and. I believe there's a universal intelligence that drives it all. Max Planck, who was the father of quantum physics, said, "Mind is the matrix of all matter." That's pretty mystical, man.
That's beautiful.
Mind is the matrix of all matter. This is a theoretical physicist, man. And so I believe there's a universal intelligence, that there's a consciousness through everything, and there's a plan. And to the degree I stay open to that and I align with that, if it's big, it's big. If it's small, but it's big either way,
Either way.
Because it's just doing what you're here to do.
And when you choose who you're going to study with or who you're going to learn from, you're going to learn from the person whose life is perfect or the person who's been through it and has a life experience and the wisdom that comes from the things that...
Or the person whose life is perfectly imperfect.
Yeah, perfectly imperfect.
We're all perfectly imperfect, right?
My man.
I mean, that's humanity.
Yeah.
And if we can't... let me say this too, and I know we're getting close to time, but I really believe, and we'll see if history bears us out, but I believe we're in a time, Chris, where people are ready for teachers who are raw and real.
Authentic.
And not, I know teachers, and this is no throwing rocks, but I know them who are oh so spiritual, and they're talking about monogamy, but they're having an affair,
right, or
on their wife,
or relationships with their,
or they're talking about money and they don't have any, or they're talking about health and fitness and they have double bypass, and there's no rocks at that. That's part of being human, all of it.
Yeah.
But they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
The gift that I had through pain is that mine was so public.
That you got no choice but to be open. Yeah.
I like I said earlier in the interview, I represent the dark side of
it just has to be
purpose.
represented, and it's like you represent the real side.
Yeah.
I feel the same thing. I represent the real side. There's nothing I don't talk about that I'm not willing to say, and you tell the truth. And that's what people want more than anything else. They'd like to project perfection onto. A friend of mine said that people will project perfection onto the person that they look as their idol or the mentor or the guide, and then they'll because they can't see it within themselves, and then they'll look to poke holes when something goes wrong and make that person wrong for it, because once again they can't see their own underlying perfection.
Right.
And
Right.
The perfection of the imperfection.
Every sinner is a saint.
Yeah.
And every saint is a sinner.
And why don't we leave it
Yeah.
there? We got to go.
Yeah.
Much love, brother.
Hey, keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for being here.
We'll do it again.
We'll do it again, yes. We'll see you on the next episode. And until then, love deeply, shine brightly, make every day an extraordinary adventure.